Hey there, and welcome to Compliance for Confluence. Compliance has been built to help you better organize the different types of data in your Confluence site and make sure that you have the right controls and protection in place. In this video, I'm going to show you everything that you need to know to get up and running with Compliance, from navigating the app to using its core features and where you can get help if you need it. But don't worry, whilst this video is longer than usual, it's been broken up into chapters, so you can skip forward to the parts that are most important to you. First, we're going to take a walkthrough of the Compliance for Confluence app, so you can get familiar with its layout. Once it's installed, you can access it by clicking into the Apps menu at the top here, and then clicking into Compliance. This will open up a dashboard view that is available in the Compliance app, and the dashboard is a great way to see which of your pages are pending classification, but also to get some statistics on your recent page classifications. Next up, we have the search page, which is accessible by clicking classification levels on the left. And this is where you can search for Confluence pages based on their classification level. The search is really useful if you have a large Confluence instance with loads of pages and spaces, and you need to find specific pages that are classified as certain levels. It's also a really useful way to see if any pages are pending classification, so you can ensure these are appropriately categorized. It's worth pointing out that Confluence users will only see the dashboard and search features on the left-hand navigation bar. And this is because all the configuration settings in Compliance are controlled by Confluence admins. If you are an admin, you will see the extra settings option here. Settings is where you will spend most of your time if you're a Confluence site admin, because all of the configuration settings for Compliance can only be adjusted by admins. So let's jump into the settings now. As you can see, there are a range of options available on the left-hand navigation menu, which we'll go through in more detail, starting with data classification. Data classification is a great way to organize your documents in Confluence based on the type of information they possess. And Compliance makes it really easy for you and your teams to implement data classification in Confluence. Whether you have a simple 3-stage data classification model or a more expansive multi-level classification structure, Compliance will allow you to bring your data classification processes into Confluence. As expected, site admins are the only ones who can create, edit, or delete data classification levels. And all of this is managed in the classification level section that you see here right now. When you access the level section, you will see 4 classification levels available by default. But you can easily change these or delete them if they are not required. You can also add as many classification levels as you need without limits. So be sure to create all the data classification levels that your organization needs in Confluence. Next up, we have level schemes. The level schemes in Compliance gives you greater flexibility over how classification levels are applied throughout Confluence. Level schemes are essentially a custom group of classification levels that you can use. For example, in the Levels tab, you may have 8 different data classification levels. But let's say the engineering team only need 4 of those for those documents and pieces of work. Well, you can create a custom level scheme for the engineering team with only those 4 classification levels included, and then can apply it to their spaces. When the team go to select the levels in those spaces, they will only see the 4 that you have provided to them. And just to note before we move on, there will always be a default level scheme in Compliance for Confluence. This will always contain all of the classification levels, and it cannot be edited or deleted. However, you can control how it is used in the Scope section, which we'll cover shortly. Next up, we're going to go into the page restrictions controls in Compliance. This allows you to align page access with the data classification levels, meaning that the page access will be limited to specific users or groups depending on the data classification level of the document, which is pretty useful. And as you guessed it, all of this is controlled and managed by Confluence site admins. Page access is managed by the restriction schemes, and these work in a similar way as the level schemes we covered just now. You can create custom restriction schemes, which will then control user or group access, and based on the selected classification level for the Confluence page, you can add users or groups to the different fields you see here, granting them view-only permissions or view and edit permissions for those pages. Just like in the level schemes, there will always be a default restriction scheme, but as mentioned before, you can control how this is used on your Confluence site. Next up, we're going into the scope settings. This is where you can control how the data classification levels and the page access restrictions are applied across your entire Confluence site. Here you have two options. First, you can manage everything globally, which means you apply the same levels and restrictions across your entire Confluence instance and all of its spaces. Or you could take a more customized approach and manage levels and restrictions on a space-by-space basis. And this is where the level schemes and restriction schemes really come into their own. Instead of a one-size-fits-all approach, schemes will allow you to apply classification levels and restrictions across your Confluence site in a way that's right for your organization and all of the different teams who use Confluence every single day. You'll also notice the default classification and enforced classification on this scope settings. The default classification gives you the ability to set a standard classification level for your entire Confluence instance or specific spaces, which means that pages will not be left unclassified. If you prefer to empower your users to make the decision, enforced classification will require every user to select a classification level before a page can be created or published. Once this feature is activated, it is not possible for users to leave pages unclassified. For the final part of this walkthrough, we're going to take a quick look at sensitive data detection. This is a relatively new addition to Compliance for Confluence, but it can make a big difference to your organization. Compliance will automatically scan for different types of sensitive data contained in your Confluence pages so that you can take action and mitigate risk. As you can see here, there are 4 different data types available out of the box, but you can create your own custom regular expressions that Compliance will use to detect sensitive data. If you want to find out more about how to use sensitive data, we have a ton of user guides and videos available to help walk you through everything that you need to know. And now that we've covered all the main configuration settings that are available to the admins, let's take a look at how Compliance will look from a Confluence user's perspective. If we jump back into a page here, you can see the classification level is displayed in the top right corner of the page. If you click into this classification level, it will display the other data classification options that are available for this document. And just a reminder, if you have used the custom level schemes, the options displayed here will vary depending on the level scheme that's assigned to this space. And when viewing the classification levels here, if we select a new classification level, if you have page restrictions associated with this level, these will automatically update at this point. And there we have it. Those are all the core features in Compliance for Confluence that you need to know to get started. Just remember, you're not alone when using Compliance. We have extensive user guides available that cover every single feature in detail, and there are a bunch of video tutorials that will walk you through all the main features. We also have a UK-based customer support team available to help you, so please reach out to us at support@appfox.io if you have any questions or need any assistance. In the meantime, we hope you and your teammates enjoy using Compliance for Confluence.